started, and we're going to talk about the hubs. As a matter of fact, let me scroll down here for a second. Here's our agenda for today. Do want to talk about this open house we have coming up in Fort Collins, actually, for our northern Colorado folks, a little bit closer to home for you, on November 8th. And we're going to talk about the hydrogen hub. There's not a lot that we necessarily know, but we'll talk about it. And I've kind of put together some of my own analysis, and then we're going to give an update on the Fort Collins fuel station. So the open house, as I said, this is at C0 up in Fort Collins, and they've graciously offered to host us and provide some food and drink. I think just beer and wine and sodas and things, but they're going to show us a couple of their projects up there. And I don't know any more about these projects than what's written here, so I'll let y'all read that. But we've got some great attendees. I know Maria, I think, is planning on being there. Keith Whipke at NREL is planning on being there, and a lot of other folks too. So even if you're not that keen on seeing their projects at C0, I think you probably want to at least do some networking and do some FaceTime with all of us. So, all right, enough said there. So, like I said, we're going to talk about the hub. And Anya and Maria, before I turn the floor over to you, because I know Anya's got to leave at 4, I did want to just review kind of the highlights of this thing. And then later on, after Maria and Anya have spoken, I'll go into some of the analysis I've done. But some of you may have seen this. I don't know if this is a perfect representation of who applied. And some of these you can see, there's 5 that are unconfirmed. But of course, our area, Wish, there was a couple up in the Pacific Northwest. The Northeast as well was some of the folks that applied. And then here's what the lay of the land looks like for the hubs that were awarded. So I took some time to look at the area of the country and these states, as well as the population. And it looks like it's only about 30% of the U.S. area, which I think is a big concern. I think that to develop the market, if I was king for a day, I would have asked that we try to hit just about every state with some kind of support for hydrogen. And, you might think, well, maybe they were going for big population centers, but that's only 43%. So that's what that looks like. The hub summary, and this came out of that link that I put in the message, the email message that I sent to everybody. So this is certainly stuff that you can find on your own, but you can see a lot of this was based around existing oil and gas infrastructure. There's a lot of I assume it's SMR, but basically using Appalachian, using natural gas, Mid-Atlantic, repurpose oil infrastructure. California, of course, is going to be 100% renewable. And I was glad to see biomass. That was the only mention of that. Here, Gulf Coast, more from natural gas. Heartland here, they're talking about producing ammonia fertilizer, which I cringe at a little bit, because one of the things we need to do for climate change is to stop using ammonia fertilizer. Okay, so that is what it is. Space heating, I think that's a pipe dream. I don't think we'll ever use hydrogen for space heating, and I'm going to talk to that today. Steel and glass production, that's good to see. Refining, and we don't see any mention of medium or light duty transportation, but we do see a few instances of heavy duty transportation, aviation fuel, and Pacific Northwest kind of championing just renewable sources. So that is just kind of an overview to get us focused. And I want to introduce Anya Richmond to those of you that don't know her. She was at least the WISH program director. And I don't know, Anya, why don't you continue to introduce yourself and give us any thoughts you have? I know that I don't think we really know why we weren't selected, and may never know that. But I know when you and I talked, you were talking about the possibility of continuing some of the things that were set up for the hub, and maybe go ahead and speak to that.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for the invitation. So again, I'm Anya Richmond with the Wyoming Energy Authority. And yeah, I mean, we just learned late last week that our hub wasn't awarded. But in conversations and communications and that I've had with the WISH Executive Committee, so those are the members from Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, in addition then to here in Wyoming, we built a lot of momentum and a lot of collaboration around the work that we did for putting in the proposal. And so we still see a lot of value in that, right? Because I can speak from a selfish Wyoming perspective. We export 80 to 90% of our energy, right? And so we continue to work with markets then that are outside of our state boundaries. And so this collaboration is a perfect example of how we can be helping each other with, what we are good at, and then leverage what our neighboring states are good at, or, the markets that they have versus what we can provide. So and my colleagues then from the executive committee see that similarly. There's real value in the bipartisan nature of the collaboration. And there are a lot of similarities then in our approach to life, in our geography, in our geology here in the mountain states. And so that's just a great benefit that we continue to want to leverage. So while we're still in the early stages of figuring out what that means now going forward, it's still the desire for that collaboration exists. Maybe I'll turn to Maria to see if there's anything she would like to add.
Sorry, I had muted myself per your request, Brian. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Actually, I have a new title. I'm now the Advanced Clean Energy Advisor at the Colorado Energy Office on the policy team. So we were disappointed, of course, to find out actually last Thursday night that we weren't one of the chosen hubs. And as your map, actually, that's a really interesting map, Brian, that you put together. It really does show the gap left in the western, especially the western mountain states. And I think in the West here, we don't have the access to compact urban areas like they do really in the rest of the US. We have big geographic areas, and I think our proposal did really work to bridge that. We had this bipartisan collaboration, so I really think we had a good proposal, and we got some really good momentum. I think there is as Anya mentioned, a lot of interest in some collaboration going forward. I can tell you that the state of Colorado is absolutely committed still to developing a clean energy economy. I think one obvious area for continued collaboration will probably be in the transportation sector, as we have corridors that we could all work together on. Here in Colorado, we're making a lot of advances for clean. And I just want to kind of go over and assure everybody that we're going to keep moving forward in developing this economy. If we look to the transportation sector, we just passed in April of this year the Advanced Clean Truck Rule, which is going to mandate that manufacturers of medium and heavy duty vehicles meet certain goals for clean vehicles in the state. So that's going to drive a certain amount of development here. We also have 3 enterprises that were formed actually there were 4 enterprises that were formed, and they're funded by a fee on every single delivery that takes place in the state of Colorado. It's divided among these 4 enterprises. It's a pretty significant amount of money. And 3 of the enterprises, there's 3 enterprises that are going to fund clean transportation. The Community Access Enterprise will fund hydrogen fueling stations. That program is not stood up yet. It's going to take, we're going to do a state, well, actually, We're going to do an RFI, a request for information. That request for information is to kind of give us, we're going to get a little bit of information, try to get some information from stakeholders about what should we include in an analysis to help us inform standing up a hydrogen fueling station program. Because as we look towards California and other places where this has been done, we've seen that they've had some real problems getting those station programs set up. So we want to do an analysis first that will help inform the setup of this program. So that funding program is not set up, and it's going to probably take at least a year or two to get set up. Then the other two enterprises that fund clean transportation is the Clean Fleet Enterprise and the Clean Transit Enterprise. And both of those enterprises will fund, and I think are already funding, hydrogen medium and heavy duty vehicles. In addition to that, we are going to have a clean hydrogen end use tax credit that is going to be for hard to decarbonize sectors, which would be aviation, heavy duty transportation. Let me just look it up exactly. The process that has a generation of heat to at least 150 degrees Celsius for industrial purposes, in addition as a feedstock for industrial purposes, including manufacture of steel, ammonia, fertilizer, and chemicals. There's going to be two tiers to that credit, 33 cents per kilogram for the lower tier, $1 per kilogram for the upper tier. So if you combine that with the tax credit that we're waiting for guidance for from the federal government, which is for production, and then we are going to have this end use tax credit, I really think that that's going to make Colorado a really attractive place to do projects. And we also have an industrial tax credit that fits certain applications. That's on our website. So we have a lot going on. And let me just back up to that end use tax credit for hydrogen. That is not active yet. First, we need to develop the accounting method for that. We are waiting somewhat. We're waiting to see what that comes out of the federal government, because we kind of want to align with that. Also, we had set up a process through our Public Utility Commission to approve any hub award that we might get. We obviously didn't get it, so now that needs to be tweaked a little bit. So the process for how to calculate that tax credit has to go through our PUC first. So there's going to be a little bit of time before that tax credit is stood up. But as you can see, we have a lot going on.
How are you?
Good. I couldn't find the mute all button. Could everybody please mute themselves, except of course for Maria and Anya, just so we don't get some background noise.
So anyway, as you can see, we have a lot going on, and we still are really committed to developing this economy in the state. I think there was a question there. And that's
well, thanks, Maria. That's there's a lot going on that I wasn't aware of. I better get up to speed on some of that.
Yeah, I can help. You can call me Brian if you want.
Yeah. So let's see, Anya said, I'm looking at the chat. So Anya said, I think the Texas hub also had a Louisiana component. I think you're right, because of the geography there. I wasn't able to find that before this meeting. And then Mandy Miller with Next Era Energy, and welcome, Mandy, said, will any of the tax credits for power generation be to support EV development? Andy, I don't know, maybe you need to clarify that.
I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah.
Hey guys, so what I was asking is, will any of the tax credits be generated for power generation using hydrogen to support EV deployment? So what we're seeing is, in some of these markets, they're leaving out components for electrification of vehicles in these tax credits by the medium of power generation. So using hydrogen as a fuel to support EV applications.
You mean it's combustion?
No, not combustion. There's other technologies using hydrogen that don't have internal combustion, but generate on-site power for EV applications for medium and heavy duty fleets.
So the one of the qualified uses for the end use tax credit is for the operation of heavy duty motor vehicles. and it's per a definition of heavy duty motor vehicle. I'm not sure. I'd have to go and look at the definition there and see if that's going to cover it or not. But in the final, when they do the final guidance, that will be defined. I mean, I would depend on whether it is a heavy duty motor vehicle, and it would depend on, if it's combustion, then it's probably not going to be covered. If it is some type of fuel cell resulting in zero emissions, it could very well be covered.
Thanks, Maria. And will you have your contact information so I can email you directly to find out?
I'll put it in the chat.
Okay. Anya, did you have any other comments that you wanted to put in at this point?
I think I would just want to communicate, stay tuned. Like I said, we're proud of the collaboration that we've built, and how we've been able to come together around this vision of hydrogen here in the Mountain West. So even though it's, like Maria said, it's a big disappointment that we weren't funded, we're still going to be figuring out, how can we be leveraging the relationships that we've built, and continue to figure out how we can support hydrogen, not just in our individual states, but across the 4 states, because there's real value in that.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Well, Maria and Anya, if you don't have any other comments, I did do a bit of analysis, and I've got a number of slides here to just talk to some of my thoughts on this. But, the one that I still keep puzzling over is what the overall strategy of the DOE was. And to me, it looks like they were keen on funding the things they talked about, like hydrogen from nuclear, hydrogen from petroleum, fully renewable, hydrogen from biomass to some extent. And it looks like they kind of picked areas that were doing that. And I was a little disappointed because I was hoping that they were going to try to kind of spread the money around the country to seed the market, to get hydrogen going kind of everywhere. So I don't know, Anya or Maria, if you thought about what we think the overall strategy of the DOE was in these awards, or maybe you don't even have any thoughts there, but if you do, be curious to hear.
Yeah, we don't have any, and I'll let Anya comment from her Wyoming perspective, but we don't know. It was really at their discretion. We were surprised. We were actually kind of shocked. This map is really, as I'm looking at it, it's like, wow. We don't know. Maybe we will get some insight in the future, but 3 days out, we really don't. We don't know. I don't know, Anya, if you have anything to add.
No, and at this point, I don't have any great insights. I think there's probably people on this call who have a better kind of thumb on the pulse of DOE and kind of what the tendencies are, or kind of what the thought patterns may be. So no, at this point, I am guessing along with everybody else.
Well, like I say, I did an analysis, and I'm going to go into a number of slides here, but maybe before I do that, if anybody else wants to comment at this point or press on with my analysis and throw out comments at that point. Anybody?
Hi, Brian. This is Masood Ahmad from Platte River. Could this be our geography is the challenge because, distances are long and the transmission cost is really high. So, building a hub which connects many suppliers and many users is going to be more expensive in our area. Could this be the reason?
Could be. I'm with Anya and Maria, just absolutely shocked that we didn't get a hub and really wondering why.
We certainly are.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's
yeah. Okay.
Brian, Bill here.
No, go ahead. Yeah. Hey, Bill.
Hi. I was on a conference call earlier with folks from the Pacific Northwest Hydrogen Hub, and yesterday with folks from the California Hydrogen Business Council, and trying to put together what I've learned from there. as a member of the advisory committee for the Pacific Northwest Hub, I suggested that whether or not DOE money is awarded for negotiation of award to PNW Hub, that the Hub should go forward. If there's money available, if it's a great idea, then celebrate that you didn't get all the encumbrances that come with the federal money and redesign the thing, recompose the full application to optimize it for what you can do best and what you want to do, then find the money. I know you don't have a Bezos and a Gates like we do in the Pacific Northwest, but maybe there's enough money around to put it together. And I see a couple of opportunities. One proceeding from the funding that the Leedy Foundation has given to RMI to do a convening of pipeline experts to try to deal with the mystery of whether we'll ever be able to use natural gas pipelines, extant ones in the ground, for moving large quantities of hydrogen. And depending on how that turns out, maybe that can become one of your specialties there. The other big opportunity is when we're able to bore deep enough, cheap enough to access deep, hot, dry rock, geothermal, that becomes geothermal anywhere, hydrogen anywhere, and that removes the problem of moving hydrogen around, doesn't it? Or does it? So there's another opportunity for you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks, Bill, and appreciate you've got a little insight into some of the other hubs, so we appreciate that. Jan Rose has her hand up. Jan, go ahead.
Thanks, Brian. I sent you an email about this, and another one today. I sent you one yesterday going, I'm shocked. but I have since done some investigatory work, and Colorado has also applied to be a tech hub. And the two areas we are applying to be considered are in artificial intelligence and quantum, both of which are massively energy intensive parts of being a tech hub. And the fairly well-sourced feedback is that, tech hubs aren't going to go to Silicon Valley. They're not going to go to Boston because they're well-established tech hubs. And Colorado is fairly well-established in the hydrogen market because of NREL. And all the work that you all have been doing. And so the email that I sent you right before this meeting was, I see a legislative opportunity here at the state level, because if those industries do in fact get the award, which is due to be announced this week, then all the wind and solar we have put on the grid are going to get grabbed by those industries. And I think it's a great opportunity to run a bill in the 2024 legislative session that says these energy intensive industries, including crypto mining, should be required to use green hydrogen from electrolyzers instead of stealing all the additional wind and solar we are putting on the grid. So, I have some suggestions for who can help you run those, a bill such as that. But there's apparently a significant amount of confidence that because of all the tech companies that are already in Colorado, we stand a good shot of winning a tech hub designation. And the White House did not want to make us both a hydrogen and a tech hub winner. So for what that's worth, I offer you that info.
Well, thanks, Jan. And for everybody else on the call who maybe isn't so familiar with Jan does a huge amount of, I'll call it pro bono work with the legislature, and is kind of a force majeure, I would say, down at the State House. So, Jan, I need to get together with you. We'll have a beer or something and noodle on some ideas for some bills. To kind of add on to what you were saying, though, Colorado has incredible geothermal resources, which could be called upon to generate energy. And we also have 20,000 abandoned oil wells that need remediation. And those can be turned into, and I'm going to talk about this later on in some of the slides, zero greenhouse gas sources of hydrogen, because the hydrocarbons never come out of the ground. And so, and those things.
Yeah. Brian,
those things
so
could help.
much to say about what's going on
Yeah.
in that space, and the fact that Governor Polis, and I'm sure Maria Eiselman will correct me if I'm wrong, but Governor Polis is positioning us to transition from an extractive economy to an injection and finding new used and useful purposes for our vast quantity of depleted oil wells. And so there's a lot of movement already taking place in that regard. And I see great synergy between the Colorado Hydrogen Network and the goals of the Energy and the Carbon Management Commission, which is the new name for the old Oil and Gas Commission, and is reflective of the fact that that's where Polis wants to move us. So yes, and a beer is always the quickest way to my heart. So,
Or maybe I should just say beer, not limited to a beer, but
yeah,
there's so much to talk
yes,
about.
would love to discuss this, know
Yeah.
exactly which legislators would be interested in moving such things forward. And it's let's talk. But I want to reiterate that there's a lot of hope within the state of Colorado to leverage truly green hydrogen.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Jan. And, anybody on the call that has an interest in trying to work with the legislature, either if you think you have some experience that could help there, or you want to learn, and Jan, Jan has got so much knowledge on how to do that and how to make things happen and who's who, that, if you do want to learn, that might be a great opportunity. So send me an email or get in contact with me. And because I'm busy with running the network and the podcast. And so carving out some time for the legislature, I could use some help. Okay. Thank you, Jan. Well, I'll tell you what, let me press ahead with some of this analysis. And let me also at the same time we're doing that, invite people to raise your hand and interrupt as we go if you want to make comments. But I was pretty disappointed in this, not so much that Colorado wasn't, or the Rockies, the WISH wasn't selected, but also I just see this as this is not the way I would have done this. Okay. And I'm going to go into the reasons for that. So already talked to the fact that this is very limited geographical coverage. And my big concern here is that that's going to hurt investment in the other 70% of the country, that all the investors are going to go to where this money is that's coming from the government. So in addition to that, though, I think that we need to decarbonize the whole country, not just 30% of the area. So very disappointed in that regard. I think, too much emphasis on generating hydrogen and not enough on developing the market. I get calls all the time from companies that are making hydrogen, either electrolysis or whatever, new ways and things, and they want to sell it. But I've yet to get a single call from anybody who's looking for hydrogen. And, part of the reason for that is that we're at the stalemate of the chicken and the egg. People can't buy hydrogen until there's producers, and people can't produce it till there's buyers, and they all kind of have to happen at the same time. And I was hoping that the hub would, or the money for the hubs would help do some of that to basically marry up the suppliers and the users and the infrastructure. If you're a fleet and you want to get a vehicle, you got to have a vehicle in addition to just having the hydrogen. So I thought that was a huge miss with the hubs. I don't see very much funding for pipelines, and Bill Leedy just spoke to that about this. Can we use natural gas pipelines? Do we need to invent some kind of cheap and durable pipeline for hydrogen? And it's not clear to me that the hub is providing that. Fuel stations, and I'll talk to this a little bit more, but they are funding some things in California and I think in the Appalachian region, but didn't see enough of that, and didn't see any talk of trying to fund commercial hydrogen vehicles. And here I'm talking about medium duty. We've got the Mirai and the Nexo, and next year we should have the Honda CRV as well for the passenger side. And there's a lot going on with the big Class 8s, the big over-the-road trucks, but the stuff in between is pretty lean right now, although it's out there. And then I didn't see anything funding utility scale. And we already heard Masood is on for PRPA, and I think we'd all love to have some turbines that would run off of hydrogen so that the utilities could be generating electricity from hydrogen. I already talked to this. I think too much emphasis from petroleum, which, yeah, they're going to capture the carbon, but I think even if you improve the methane leakage, it's still an issue. And you don't need to do that because we've got, as I've already spoke to, the underground hydrogen generation, which never brings the carbon out of the ground. It's cheaper, and you can also sequester carbon. So speaking of that one, I'm going to give us a little review here. I've shown this slide at least twice before during these meetings, but maybe if you're new and you haven't seen this, what this is a technique developed by Proton Technologies. You can see their logo and their link down there. But basically what this does is take all kinds of existing technology that's been used in the petroleum industry and reapplying it to generate hydrogen. And the way this works is that, first of all, you separate air into into nitrogen and oxygen, and you inject the oxygen down in the well. You can inject air, but the nitrogen tends to pollute the air, or pollute the reservoir. That generates hydrogen because of the water and the heat caused by oxygen reacting with the hydrocarbons, and hydrogen is released. And then that pure hydrogen is brought to the surface through a palladium filter. And it's 99.9999, so 4 nines, pure hydrogen. So you don't have to worry about methane leaks. You don't have to worry about having to do something with the carbon later. This works well with abandoned wells. Already mentioned, Colorado's got 20,000 abandoned wells, many of which need remediation. So this would be a good way to turn those liabilities into assets. And as I said, you can sequester 3 times the carbon dioxide as the hydrogen that you pull out. So that becomes permanently locked in the rock structures below. And so this is why I think bringing petroleum out of the ground and then trying to make hydrogen out of it is not a good idea. And there was a podcast on this. If you jot down the date here, December 23rd of 2022, you can go listen to that podcast with Proton Technologies. All right, so the other concern I had about this is lack of setting up a nationwide hydrogen fuel network. Now, I realize that because of the way these hubs are structured, they're individual hubs applying for individual reasons. That's hard to set up a network, but it seems like I think more could have been done to try to coordinate that. There was no mention of geological hydrogen. And what this is basically hydrogen wells. Hydrogen occurs naturally underground, and you can just drill a simple well bore to free that. And there's a lot going on here. There's 2 companies in Colorado, Natural Hydrogen Energy, NH2E, and Coloma. Coloma just got $91 million, I think it was, from part of that came from the Bill Gates, the Energy Futures, I think is the name of that association. And so there's a lot more coming on this, a lot of work going on with geological hydrogen at the School of Mines as well. Use of SMR, already talked to that. And only the California hub is producing hydrogen from biomass. None of the others are. And there was absolutely no mention at all of hydrogen from algae. And what that is, well, let's see, I have a slide on that, but I guess it wasn't the next slide. So I'll come back to that. Let me pause for a second. Anybody want to comment at this point?
Brian, maybe you can answer a question for me about biomass hydrogen. So do you first turn biomass into methane and then methane into hydrogen? And isn't there a huge efficiency loss when you do that?
There is some efficiency loss, but there's a number of ways to do that. There's pyrolysis. There's also anaerobic bacteria that can break things down. Let's see. Hang on a second. Here's my slide on this. So there's a number of things that can be used for creating either biofuels or hydrogen. Could be wastewater solids, basically that's sewage, things from the drink and food processing industry, animal waste, forest slash. Was pleased to see there's a program going on to take some of the National Forest Service slash and turn it into useful energy. Chemical waste, the mixed solid waste, and then algae. And those can be turned into a number of products. I guess I'm getting ahead, but that's all right here. So, for example, with algae, the nice thing about algae is the entire plant is devoted to photosynthesis. And so you don't have roots and bark and waste, things like that you're not doing anything with. But that can be turned into some kind of a biocrude, which you could sequester some of that, or you could turn that into jet fuel, renewable natural gas, maritime fuel, and so forth. Now, there is an energy loss associated with it, but because there's so many co-products with the industrial enzymes and the biocrude and the animal feed, it's very efficient financially. It can pay its own way. So, and the other nice thing about this is you're pulling carbon out of the atmosphere with direct air capture, which I don't think we'll ever find efficient enough machinery to make a dent into that. But Maria, does that answer your question a bit?
Kind of. I guess that my question is, maybe I don't understand the process well enough, but once you turn it into, say, renewable natural gas, why wouldn't you just use the renewable natural gas? Why would you do the next step and turn it into hydrogen?
Oh, you could.
Like, what's the efficiency? It seems like if you go through the whole process of creating RNG, why would you then turn that into hydrogen? And maybe I'm understanding. And we can talk offline. I don't want to totally
No. You're kind of anticipating one of my other slides here, and I'm jumping around a little bit, but that's okay. But you're absolutely right. I think there are sectors that are going to need biofuel. For example, building heating. Now think about the installed base of furnaces that are out there in homes and in buildings. We're never going to run those off of hydrogen because you'd have to replace the equipment and you'd have to find a way to get that hydrogen to those homes. So I really believe that for existing homes, the eventual answer is going to be biofuel. And even though it involves carbon, if you are pulling that carbon from the atmosphere because you're using biology, and maybe you're even sequestering some of that biofuel, whether it's crude or whatever, you're actually drawing down carbon from the atmosphere. So I think, people talk about using heat pumps for new buildings, new construction. I think that makes a lot of sense. But trying to convert existing homes to heat pumps, if you've got forced air, it's not too bad. But if you've got any kind of a boiler, it gets real expensive, and you may have to convert from baseboard heat to forced air and so forth. So, but you have a good point. I think that there are times you will turn biomass into hydrogen, but I think most of the time you're probably going to use it as a biofuel for aviation, for maritime, and for building heating. So really good point, Maria. All right, so I'm jumping around a little bit here. All right, I think we jumped off from there. So, in my opinion, and I guess this is too late, but what should the hubs be funding? Well, I wish that the Department of Energy had looked at this pie chart and said, well, let's try to fund things that are going to make a dent in the emissions from vehicles, the emissions from electric power generation. The industry here in this case is like glass, cement, steel, any place you need heat, baking, metal processes and so forth, and building heating. So I already talked to this. This is where I think the future fuels lie in the spectrum of these different sectors. And we already talked to that. And I already talked to the algae. So I guess maybe I didn't go this far. There is 2 hydrogen nowcasts on this. I know I've mentioned this to the group before, but if you jot down those dates, 4/29/22 and 2/10/23, you may want to listen. Those are with Richard Sayer, who's a scientist, formerly a scientist at Los Alamos National Labs. And he talks about the whole process to get from algae to these different fuels and why it makes economic sense to do that. All right, so I wish that they had targeted the hub money to do these things, to build markets, hydrogen markets, that is, to really focus on how we decarbonize across the entire country, not just in specific areas, and then to also develop the technology that maybe is missing right now. So with the markets, we really need to start putting more emphasis on the users. And I know that last of the 8 billion that was earmarked by the Department of Energy is for the users. And so that's good to see. And I hope that they get a lot of mileage out of that money. We also, as I mentioned before, we need infrastructure. If you're a fleet and you'd like to convert to a hydrogen vehicle, there aren't a lot of medium duty commercial type vehicles out there right now. There are some, but we need to fund those things. Maybe out of scope for the hubs to actually do financing and incentives and tax credits, because there's other avenues there, but it's certainly something we need. And then, as I pointed out earlier, supply, the geological hydrogen, underground hydrogen generation, and biomass and algae seem kind of weak right now, not getting a lot of focus. And again, trying to address the whole country. I wish some champion out there would say, here's the plan for a national network of fuel stations, and free up a little bit of money for that. And the industrial processes, I think that is being addressed by some of the hubs. I hope it's enough and will spread to other parts of the country. And then I think what was completely neglected was the electric utilities using hydrogen for energy generation and energy storage. Already talked about, we need pipeline development, and we need to develop geological hydrogen and underground. So I'm a little repetitious there. And then I think the specific support areas would be to try to spread the money around to seed the markets. And also, well, let me speak to that. So one thing that would really help to just start the market would be if we could require injection of hydrogen into natural gas pipelines. Now, even if this is just a couple of %, it doesn't move the needle much on decarbonization, but it creates a market for hydrogen. So producers can get out there, start producing it, and that will become available for users to start using it. And then what I wish the federal and state governments would do is to require that some number of vehicles and the big fleets of vehicles that are out there be fuel cell, because that would drive the need for fuel stations. And then those fuel stations could be used by other companies as well as individuals. And then, of course, require some transit companies to start deploying hydrogen vehicles, and they get a lot of federal funding. So I think that's the carrot stick for that.
Brian, if I could just interject there, in Colorado, because we did pass the Advanced Clean Truck Rule, and now we have these incentives, that may push things in that direction. We don't mandate that they have to be hydrogen, but they have to be. But anyway, that's a big plus on our side.
It is, and kudos to you and the Energy Office for getting those things in place, because I think that's going to make a huge difference. All right, pipeline, already talked to that. And then also one thing I didn't see was any mention of looking at a parallel system of hydrogen pipelines to parallel the electric grid. And I have to give Bill Leedy the credit for this idea for energy transmission. And the advantage there is, well, there's several things. First of all, it's really, really difficult to get new transmission lines put in place. I mean, you just hear stories all the time of new transmission lines being shot down. To some extent, you can double and triple the wire that's there now to increase the carrying capability, but it doesn't really take it to new places, which we're going to need in the future. But the other thing about the underground pipelines they're out of sight, so people aren't going to fight those as they're going to fight transmission lines. And if you can allow a certain amount of pressure differential on those pipelines, they can store hydrogen. So the pressure goes up, you can store some hydrogen, you bring the pressure down a little bit to use that hydrogen. Jan's got her hand up again. Jan, go ahead.
Thanks, Brian. Just wanted to offer up some additional information. Um, uh, Evraz Steel in Pueblo, which has their process 95% powered by solar, um, also was the first American manufacturer of steel that qualified to transport hydrogen. And because there is a massive request in from our investor-owned utilities to run new transmission lines from our new wind and solar plants out on the Eastern Plains in a giant loop around the state, there's an opportunity to create a Colorado-centric approach here where we use Evrat's hydrogen qualified pipeline to avoid the NIMBY issue of running these new high voltage transmission lines through people's lovable open space. So I think that's an idea, using hydrogen not just alongside high capacity transmission lines, but in lieu of high capacity transmission lines in the state. So just wanted to offer that up.
Well, thanks, Jan. I wasn't aware that Evraz was working on or has developed, I guess I'll say, hydrogen tolerant pipe. Do you or does anybody on the call know of a contact at Evraz? I'd like to reach out to them.
I can get you one because Evraz presented to to an interim legislative committee last Friday. And that's how I found out. They were the first North American supplier to have a hydrogen carrying qualified steel pipe. And I was like, Yahoo, because, our current hydrogen pipeline plans are to convert natural gas pipelines, which, we will lose more hydrogen than we transport. So happy to, to provide that to you.
Okay, thanks, Jan. I'll reach out to them, and who knows, maybe we'll get a podcast out of this. Maybe we'll get them joining in our monthly meetings as well. So thanks. Excellent information. As long as we pause here for a second, anybody else with any comments or questions right here?
Brian, it's Bill again.
Yeah.
I will put in the chat at least the name of a paper by DeSantis, Sauer, Lebowski et al. It might be an NREL paper on the relative cost for large-scale, long-distance energy transmission, comparing pipelines and electric lines. Electric lines are several times more expensive per unit of transmission than hydrogen and pipelines. So that may be relevant. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. And I know you and I have talked to that before, and that's a real eye-opener that the hydrogen pipelines actually would be cheaper. And, I like the idea because they're not as prone to terrorist attacks because they're buried. And so very good. All right, thanks. Anybody else?
Hey, Brian, this is Masood with Platte River Power Authority. You mentioned proton technology. I know we talked to them last year, and my impression was this is very early stage, and I looked at their website also just now. I didn't get like they have made any projects. So it's been almost a year, maybe an idea to kind of get them back, and because their technology is very promising and for Colorado, and maybe have them kind of give an update how they are progressing.
Yeah. Well, Masood, I will tell you that I have been in contact with them several times over the last year, still scratching around trying to find a project to offtake their hydrogen. Everybody says, oh, this proton technique sounds so fabulous. It's cheap hydrogen. It's probably 50 cents a kilogram. It's huge amounts of it. If it's so great, how come it's not everywhere? And the answer is that we need a market. And I come back to, this thing I keep harping on all the time, that we need to support users and markets to get this established, because, with any product you can think of, a cell phone or a refrigerator or a washing machine, you can invent a better one and you can sell it because people can use it. But with hydrogen, you've got to have infrastructure, and then the other really weak link is that it's got to be at the same scale.
Hmm.
If you can create 100 tons of hydrogen a day at 50 cents,
Right.
you got to find a buyer that can take 100 tons of hydrogen
That's
a day.
right.
And so that's why I know, Masood, you and I talked about, could we run a utility turbine off of the hydrogen? And I've been talking with some of the oil and gas guys that would like to use hydrogen to run their generators, and they would take quite a bit. But still trying to close that gap between supply and demand.
Okay.
So we'll keep trying. We'll keep trying.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Masood. All right. Well, I've talked to that already about trying to get the fuel stations going. If we could, if we just had 2 or 3 fuel stations in each of the 50 states, I mean, that would just incredibly make the market take off. And then Maria already spoke to the fact that Colorado has got these enterprises that will help fund the difference in price between gas and diesel vehicles and fuel cell vehicles. And that's another area I think that I wish the hubs are more focused on. All right. So let's see. The other places, industrial heat. I think there's still a gap to be closed to get this off the shelf. Maybe I'll say for the steel, glass, and cement producers. And they probably need some help with financing that infrastructure. And already talked to that about utility scale turbines. And then aviation. Zero Avia has got hydrogen powered aircraft. There's also a lot of drones out there. But a lot of times they're really at a loss for fuel stations. And so help is probably needed there because the initial fuel stations may not have enough offtake to make them viable. And so a little bit of support could go a long way there. All right. So, whoops, what happened here? So this is my last slide, but I've talked to this 3 times already. I really think there was too much emphasis on hydrogen generation, missed the underground types of sources for hydrogen. Too little emphasis, I think, on developing demand. In other words, they really weren't focused on developing a market, and too limited geographical areas. So that is, let's see. Sorry, I did have one more thing. I continually come back to this because so many people say, oh, we've got battery vehicles. Won't that be enough? Well, I've presented this before, but I'm going to present it again. If you look at the polls from Pew Research Center, JD Power, Consumer Reports, asking consumers, and KPMG has got a poll out there as well. Only 20 to 40% of people are willing to go with a battery vehicle. And the reasons for that is currently we've got limited charging stations. That'll change. Limited range, that'll increase a little bit. Battery life will probably increase a little. But the problem is the recharge time. And if you're driving around town, go work in school, battery car is great. But if you're taking cross-country trips, it can start to get onerous. And some people say, oh, I don't care. I like a 20-minute break to stop and charge my car every, 150, 250 miles. But a lot of people like me say, if I'm already on a 10-hour trip, I don't really want to add another, hour, 2 hours to that. And so, but the problem is that we've got to replace 100% of vehicles out there, from the smallest cars to the biggest trucks. And we've got to do that for the climate. And with only 20 to 40% of acceptance, that's pretty good if you're just trying to sell a new product. But we've got to have solutions that work for every person and every use case. So this is why I keep coming back to the fact that we have got to get a national hydrogen fueling network in place if we're going to start really making inroads into decarbonizing transportation. So I hope I'm preaching the choir here, but that's my position there. So, all right. Elliot's got his hand up. Go ahead, Elliot.
There we go. Yeah, as far as the fueling stations go, and you and I have talked about this a few times. Brian, we're about ready to make an announcement, but I will say this: we're planning on 3 hydrogen LH2 stations next year, mid to third quarter of next year, and the funding, we're just waiting to sign the contracts on that right now. So, but we're aggressively pursuing that as well, and you know, I think that you're right, building that network away from just regional, the day trip vehicles, to building that national network grid is a step-by-step process, and it's going to take a little time to evolve, but I think it's going to happen a lot sooner than a lot of people think.
I hope so.
Once the motion starts, there's going to be a lot more players coming to the surface, much larger than us, and then you're familiar with the you know, there's a lot going on, and just to say that we've been flooded with opportunity for once, way beyond our belief on the funding side. So we're excited, and we're excited to bring that to the table and start in Colorado. So,
all right. Well, you know, everybody should know, as it's always in the newsletter, is I'm collecting names of people that would like to get hydrogen vehicles, fuel cell vehicles. And so as soon as we can get a station, whoever station it is, my intention is to go to Toyota and Hyundai and Honda and get them to set up some vehicles. Yeah, because those auto manufacturers aren't going to start selling vehicles here at a dealership until there's a constellation of probably 5 fuel stations. But what I want to try to convince them to do is to do some beta testing, bring the vehicles in. The people who drive them will be beta testers, so they're going to have to put up with you know, only one or two stations in town, and they'll also have to put up with, if their vehicle, if the hydrogen part of it breaks, we'll give them a loaner and we'll have to send that vehicle to California to be repaired. But definitely want to try to get a lot of basically public awareness around that. I think if we've got a fleet of 20, 30, 50 cars running around town with signage on them advertising fuel cell vehicles, and that there is now a place to go fuel those in town, now we've got something that we can sell to legislators, to the governor, to everybody else, of let's really get behind having an alternative to the battery vehicles for zero emission vehicles. So,
Ryan, I might also add, we're very supportive of that as well, but I think that our main thrust right now is the Class 8 trucks, and that's our primary thrust. But obviously, we want to sell fuel, so if that develops, and we'll go forward and be able to accommodate that relatively quick. So,
well, and I absolutely agree with that strategy, Elliot. I think that we need to start with fuel stations that are servicing fleets and servicing the heavier duty vehicles, but keep them open to the public. You know, and the reason is the return on investment is going to come from those medium and heavy duty vehicles. The return on investment from car, you need 20 cars for every truck, and so that doesn't help you pay for your investment in the fuel station, but it helps a great deal to stimulate the interest, get public opinion turned around, get people aware of those vehicles. It's the cars are just gravy.
Right. I think it's branding awareness is what and that's what you're identifying with. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And like I told you last time we visited, I drove a Mirai about 2 weeks ago, 2017, and I really enjoyed the car. And I hear the new ones are even better. So, you know, it's exciting, and I think it's going to be an evolution. The biggest challenge, I think, is getting that fuel cost down, and getting the cost of the trucks down, and the vehicles. And the cars are more in line than the trucks are, but and that's one of our biggest challenges, is in getting our fleet signed up. How are we going to get the parity? How are we going to get to parity? And that's a big challenge.
Yeah. Well, you know, all technology is expensive when it first comes out. I right on my desk here, I keep a little piece of paper tagged up that shows 4 different technologies when they first came out. And in 1927, the first GE refrigerator was called the Monitor Top, had that little barrel thing on top of the fridge. In today's dollars, that was $7,436. Didn't even have an ice maker. And then in 1983, the Motorola Dynatac cell phone in today's dollars was 11,200. 1988 Compact Desk Pro 386, depending on memory, 18 to 30 grand. And 1998, the first Sony high def TV was 15,500 in today's money. So, we look at expensive battery electric vehicles, hydrogen electric vehicles, the fueling and everything. Yeah, it's expensive right now, but it is absolutely going to compete with gas and diesel. So.
I agree, and it's coming strong. And I think that no matter the fact that Colorado, that Wish didn't win this one of the hub selections, I think the overall concept of it happening in the country is beneficial to all of us. And I think we can move forward from there. It's a step. It's one step, one more step. We all have to, like Colorado, when we the Wish program and all that. I think they need to stay together and continue pushing forward anyway.
All right.
Well, I'll let you go.
Yeah, let's jump off of that and let's talk about the Fort Collins hydrogen fuel station. Patiently waiting has been Andrew Zdanowitz. And Andrew, I totally lost my mind on your last name earlier, and I apologize for that. But thanks for patiently waiting. And do you want to share your screen, or you want to just go off of my slides?
Yeah, that would certainly be my preference. I made some last minute changes here. So yeah, let me just kind of thumb over here.
Yeah, and while you're pulling those up, Andrew, for the folks that don't know you, I know you've been on the call before, but tell everybody who you are and what you do at CSU.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Andrew Zdanowitz. I'm a research associate here at CSU, our Energy Institute up in Fort Collins, Colorado. So research associate is, full-time staff position. I'm responsible for applying for federal funding, project execution. I oversee a number of our larger installations here at the powerhouse, one of which is this PEM electrolyzer station that we're installing now as an ongoing project. So I guess that's good enough to get us kicked off here.
Yeah.
I presented this slide maybe back in March at one of these CHN meetings, just kind of showing the vision here for our research institution here at the powerhouse. So we are the largest standalone energy research facility in the United States, at least at the university level here, and kind of a rooted history in testing large-scale power systems. Our specialty is really technology demonstrations in the 1 to 3 megawatt scale. So everything that kind of comes with that. I've highlighted some of our newer installations here, including a 3.5 megawatt Centaur 40 gas turbine. We've got some natural gas pipeline, kind of engines that would be used to run reciprocating compressors throughout the pipeline network here. Some other, combined heat and power systems that can achieve ultra high thermal efficiencies. But, my point here, I guess with this slide, including it here, is to say that, our institution is really undergoing this transformation to look at all things hydrogen. I mean, everything that I have on this slide here now has some element of hydrogen combustion, hydrogen blending, hydrogen in use research that's now associated with it. And that includes generation, right? So yeah, I guess back in March, I was laying out our plans for the summer in the installation of our PEM electrolyzer station. And I'll just kind of give a casual update of the progress that we've made here over the summer and where we're at in the process now. So reminder, we came into this equipment, right? This was originally an electrolysis, a generation compression storage dispensing container, right? It's a hydrogen fueling station that was originally commissioned in Washington, D.C. After, it was retired with the help of Brian DeBrune here and NREL, it was negotiated that this equipment was donated to our facility. And we recently, just this year, kind of got some funding from the university here, the Walter Scott Foundation, to install the electrolysis equipment. So, to kind of frame this for you, we're doing this as, kind of with a three-way motivation, right? The first is to, serve as kind of a test bed for advanced electrolysis systems that we're, developing and scaling up in-house. We have electrochemists that are new to our faculty roster here. And so this equipment will partially serve as, that research test bed. Two, I mentioned everything with the building and hydrogen end-use research that's going on. And so, our building has quite a bit of demand for gaseous hydrogen, right? We're really looking to produce at scale, kind of for our own consumption, our own research consumption. And then part three of that is, to serve as a public-facing a fueling station, right, for members of the community that can acquire a passenger vehicle here, a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle, or medium-sized box trucks, et cetera. So this equipment is really going to be kind of a versatile installation. To give you kind of an overview of that last point, I suppose, we've got this PFD here, just showing the hydrogen electrolysis equipment and our proposed compression and storage scheme here. So given that we want, kind of the two-way use of pulling hydrogen for our own use, and then also having hydrogen set aside in bulk for vehicle refueling, we've kind of have this low pressure and high pressure storage planned out. And the donation here, I guess I'll flip back. I mean, this picture isn't really all that telling. The right container here has all of the generation equipment inside. It's Proton C20 electrolyzer banks. And then the left container there is compression, storage, and dispensing. So that's where, a refueling customer can interface with a credit card machine and refill their vehicle. So we have all that equipment. There's some refurbishing steps here that needed to take place, as well as, some major construction undertakings that are going to allow us to power this equipment and generate hydrogen. So where we're at, kind of an overview, right? So we decided to bring the generation equipment inside. That was for, better student exposure, research optics, the ability to kind of attract more funding, I suppose, and generate kind of in close proximity to the equipment that will be, using the hydrogen that's produced. So first step, honestly, like the first 6 months of this project was clearing out and actually building the lab space that is now housing this equipment. So, prior to this funding, the floor that these containers are sitting on wasn't there. It was an open column into the powerhouse basement here. And with all the, mega projects that are happening inside of our facility, it's always a fight for some elbow room here. So we decided, to rearrange, the majority of the high voltage equipment that's in the basement, to make way for a new infill construction here. Got ourselves a floor in June is when the floor was finished, and then we, immediately started bringing in all of our generation equipment here. I'm calling out, just general subtasks here and their level of completion. So lab space construction is complete, equipment mounting is complete. We've got all of this tied into, our grid here, or our power distribution throughout the building. Power control, data acquisition, wiring is something that we're actively working on now. That's kind of been one of the last steps is hooking up all the communication and data acquisition wiring. Hydrogen and oxygen vent routing. So those are, waste products from the purification steps. That's 100% complete. Chiller installation was a whole project in itself. That's kind of 90% there. We just need to run some electricity out to power a pump, and we're set with that. And then code compliance and safety procedures. You can imagine, especially in a university environment, there's quite a bit of turnover. And so the students that develop expertise in how to, maintain and operate this equipment, frequently leave, right? They graduate and they move on. And so we're, building out extensive documentation here for not only emergency procedures and response, but, formal training procedures, management of change, who has access to the equipment, that kind of a thing. So everything is installed in compliance with NFPA 2, but it's just managing that expertise and make sure that random students aren't out there flipping valves, and we control access. What's not included in the current scope of the funding is storage, right? So our strategic objectives here were really to just refurbish this equipment, make sure that it's producing hydrogen, and then once we have a hydrogen product stream, be able to go back to the university or other sources of funding and say, hey, we have this hydrogen, give us some money and we'll build out bulk storage here. So basically what you're seeing is power electronics that are feeding an electrolyzer cabinet. So our PEM stacks are in here, along with various purification equipment and DI water supply. These are basically just DC rectifiers that take the incoming AC electricity and clean it up for the stacks there. So these pictures are slightly outdated. I mean, our wiring is a little bit further down the road than that right now, so I apologize for that. Just some kind of fun pictures of the construction here. Again, everything is fighting for elbow space, so we didn't even have space to put this electrolyzer chiller when we started this whole effort. So the top left is 150-ton crane that had to come out to pull a gen set out from the back of the building that wasn't being used anymore and install our chiller. So it was, we actually did a total of 7 lifts in removing the engine, pulling this roof off, putting the chiller back in. So we've kind of had a fun, construction focused summer here. And then you can see all of our, various piping here to, control flow rate to different pieces of equipment inside the electrolyzer containers. And could have probably highlighted this picture, but we've got our piping runs through the basement complete. So the only thing to do now is run power out to it. Stacks, breakers, and vents. I mentioned that we had our electrical tie-in. We've got a tunable breaker down there now. So it's configured right now for 600 amps. So that's the draw of 2 stacks in that C20 container. It has a bay there that, allows for the upgrade of 3. You can house 3 PEM stacks. And so that's why we have this tunable breaker that allows us to bump up to 800 amp. You can see our oxygen and hydrogen vents there running up the side of the building there on the right to the 40-foot roof. And then our actual stacks are still awaiting refurbishment. So we have reason to believe that, one of these is, not up to spec anymore. There's significant crossover, oxygen in the hydrogen product line, essentially. And so one of them needs to either be rebuilt or scrapped. And we've been working with Nell to kind of make that happen. But, yeah, lawyers and contracting and agreeing to terms and everything has kind of held us up here. The contract seems like it's going through, but we've thought that before. So these will likely not be functional until late December. Determined by current lead times and everything. But the rest of the system will be in place, and hopefully it'll just be kind of plug and play once those new stacks are on site. Looking forward here, right, and towards this third goal of being a public-facing, refueling station, this is kind of an inside look of that compression and storage container that I showed earlier. We've got the high pressure compressor that's capable of 10,000 psi output. Chiller block here, and then behind the wall, which isn't really, that's not the back wall of the container itself, but a false wall that separates the compression equipment here from the high pressure storage tanks. Now, the reason that it's going to take, a significant additional funding to bring this online is that those tanks are beyond their lifetime limits, their cyclical limits. They've dropped below their minimum pressure too many times, and so they can't be certified for operation. We're going to need a new bank of tanks, and so that's kind of the hold up on compression and storage right now. Timeline and ongoing work, I'm saying fall of 2023 here. That again will really depend on when we can get those new stacks from Nell. But so far we've had kind of excellent opportunity here for student engagement. We've got one graduate student that did his master's thesis on this, and I think he's on the call, Nico Landon, who's now out at Caterpillar. We've had a series of undergraduate students working for us. Me, a research staff member, and then our PI is Dr. Brett Wyndham. We are playing many angles here for hydrogen storage. Looking at federal funding opportunities, looking to pool money together from the various end-use research projects that kind of have incentive here for on-site hydrogen storage. So pulling their money together, and then exploring all of our different options. One of the recent developments here is exploring Steelhead out of Denver, who makes this hydrogen cube system. So this is a 5,000 psi storage bank that can store up to 190 kilograms. So we're in the typical university or research institution fashion. We're spreading out our strategies here for getting funding for that storage. But I'm reasonably confident that we'll be able to put something together here in the next year. And that's really all I have. So just kind of a high level overview of where we're at. Hydrogen should be pumped out of the building here, hopefully by January. It's all on those stacks. So anyway, thank you.
All right, thanks, Andrew. Boy, you guys have made a lot of progress, and pleased to see that. That station from Nell was delivered right after the start of COVID, and it just sat for so long waiting for the city to approve the permits, which really seem to be mostly around aesthetics more so than safety. But glad it's all moving forward, and we're getting some real hydrogen work and equipment and infrastructure on the ground here in Colorado. So we've got a few minutes. Anybody have any questions or comments? Oh, Bryant Beeler raised his hand. Go ahead, Bryant. Yeah, you're on mute. Bryant, are you there? Well,
can you hear me now?
Oh, now we got you.
Okay, sorry, don't know what was going on.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So my question is, and I've kind of brought this up a couple of times, and it's been entertained in some cases or not, but I think I saw JCB entertain this idea. Are you open at all to any trade study or just feasibility study on mobile refueling stations? And by that, what I mean is the cost benefit analysis of having a station that can be plugged into ground infrastructure, and then the radius that it's effective to move it around in order to meet the demand, in order to meet the dynamic and organic growth of the demand, which will be
Sure.
iterative and dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, that's not really our specialty, or at least mine here at CSU. We have, close collaborative, ties with New Day Hydrogen, which is, I imagine, and maybe Brian, you can speak more to that, that, their kind of specialty is these temporary or semi-permanent installations, similar to what I showed, that can kind of chase the demand, like what you're saying. But we don't really do anything like that at CSU.
If I came in to perform the trade study or feasibility study myself, would you be open to that or be able to assist? Because I've conducted studies like this in the past.
Sure, and yeah, maybe I'll drop my email here in the chat. That might be a conversation better on offline here, as I don't really know what that entails and if we can host you here or not. But we can certainly explore that as a possibility. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, just throw it in the chat and I'll reach out with details.
Okay, we got a couple other hands and we're running a little short on time, so I want to take these in the order they came in. I think Phil Clark, you had your hand up next, and then we'll go to Franz after that.
Yeah, appreciate it. Hey, Andrew, I worked with Nico a little bit. I provided training for him for the NFPA2 stuff.
Definitely, I know who you are.
Yeah, awesome. Station's looking great.
Nice.
One of the things that I was looking at here is the staffing that you guys have, and also, one of the things that Nico wasn't sure about was kind of the research where it would take it. I'm curious what your guys' approach is for management of change and assessing risk. Seeing that you guys have 1 grad student, 5 undergrads, 1 research staff, and a faculty member, it's kind of pretty thin from, a staffing side of things, especially retaining kind of site knowledge. When I worked at NREL in the hydrogen group, like there's a good amount of full-time staff and working all the time. What is your plan for assessing risk and doing management of change with that high of turnover?
We have a dedicated staff here that are working on those strategies. That I'm mostly responsible for the physical installation. I know that, I don't want to put you on the spot, Nico, or anything, but I know that Nico and one of our students, Sam, have been putting together those management of change strategies. All I'll say, I guess, is that I'm aware of that turnover problem. Me as permanent staff in our PI, Dr. Brett Wyndham here, kind of, I guess, as, long-term positions overseeing this installation, I guess, just formalizing training procedures and, preventing students who haven't received training from, just having broad access to the station, I think is pretty reckless. So those things are going to be controlled. And I would have to kind of circle back with those management of change documents that we formally put together here. But I don't know, kind of a dodgy answer for you, but
no, I get it. It's mostly just a challenge. A research institution, like I want to make sure that when you seek funding, that you're budgeting for management change and you're budgeting for risk assessments, because hydrogen is challenging as is, but once you throw in that research element where you're using it where it's not really one-to-one for to the code, things get really quirky really quick. And that's great, that's cool, but just make sure you have the money to do it right.
That's a fair enough point. Yep, absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Phil. I want to get over to Franz. Let's see. Andrew, are you still sharing your screen?
Oh, I am. Yep. Sorry.
You're not. Okay, yeah, I want to put the notice up for our networking meeting, but Franz, go ahead.
Yeah, hey, I do have a question for Maria. I don't know if Maria is still on.
I'm still here.
Okay, so, after the news about the, Colorado and the 4 states not being selected, and the large amount of work that has gone into this solicitation, both with the larger group and with our contractor in the second stage, is there a kind of a discussion? Are there any progressions based on these plans without the funding, or what's next kind of discussion?
Yeah, it's still really, yeah. No,
Yeah.
thanks for asking, Franz.
Yeah.
That's a great question. Still really early because we just found out, but so we don't have, because it's only been 3 days, business days. So we don't have anything concrete in plan right now, but there's so much momentum, and then we in anticipation of the hub passed all this legislation and tax credits and everything, that there's just a lot of momentum there, and our research institutions are lined up. So I would, it seems like it. We just haven't had a chance to move in that direction yet, but I would expect something to keep going.
Well, I think Brian and I had some discussions about, okay, how can we tailor our added value as a Colorado hydrogen network to the next phase? Now, the next phase was kind of, we will win this thing. Now the next phase is, well, we didn't win it. So if with the right stakeholders discussions on next phase, what do we go do? Would be great to be participated in the discussion. So maybe I'll leave it with that.
Okay. Yeah, and to be continued for sure. It's not that.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a good point, Franz. And I don't know, maybe you and I should convene kind of a working webinar, seminar, or something for a few hours to kick ideas around with Maria and CSU and whoever else, bring them into the discussion and see where are we going, what can we do, and how can we leverage the things that are already out there, as Maria pointed out earlier, with the funding and things and the incentives and so forth coming from the state, to put together maybe some kind of a plan that can guide some of us. We'll have to noodle on that one.
Yep.
Okay, well, we are miraculously ending up right about on time, and that's always wring my hands over how that's going to go. I put the slide back up to advertise the open house. Really hope we get a good turnout for that. We've got quite a few folks already. I realize for the Denver folks, it's a bit of a trek up there, but anybody who's interested, come on up. We'll do a little face to face. Boy, Maria, I haven't seen you face to face since probably 2019. So we're all in Zoom hermit mode, but be good to see you. So, all right. Ross on Long Island's got time for one more quick comment. Ross, you might be on mute.
Yeah, sorry. Just wanted
Ross?
to mention that
There you
I happen to be visiting actually in Denver right now with another friend. So if you guys were half serious about getting drinks, I'd like to take you up on that. But I was planning on shooting you an email. I've just had a little bit of changes in the travel plans.
Okay. Yeah. I'm always up for trying to meet face to face with folks, because I've considered that, part of my job with the Colorado Hydrogen Network to really know everybody and build a relationship. How long are you in town for?
Right now I'm booked through next week, but I was thinking about heading back sooner than later, like next Monday. So I don't know if it's too short notice this week. Otherwise, I should be around next week still.
Okay. Shoot me a note and let's see if by email, maybe we can converge on a time and
yeah, I'll follow up after.
Just get together. What part of town you hanging out in?
Kind of on the west side of town near Lakewood a little bit, I think.
Oh, good. Because I'm in
yeah.
Evergreen. So that helps.
Yep. So far, so
all right.
good.
All right. Well, I like to be punctual. It's 5 on the dot. Any other last quick comments before we adjourn? Everybody's hungry and you want to go eat, right? All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Great meeting. I know I saw at one point we're up to 42 participants. That's pretty good. I don't know of any other advocacy organizations in the country that put together that kind of a roster of folks for a meeting. So thank you all for your support. I really appreciate it.